The last time the US entered into a naval conflict with Iran, a $1,500 mine almost sunk a $90 million ship, putting it out of commission for almost 13 months. Fast forward to today, and you have $50,000 drones competing with $4 million Patriot missiles. Iran is building those drones at a rate of 500 per month. Meanwhile, Lockheed Martin, they only built 600 Patriot missiles in all of last year. Back at home, Wall Street is celebrating all-time highs, but gas prices just had the biggest shock since 1967, and consumer sentiment is literally reading at the lowest level in history. Americans are more pessimistic than ever. And the last time that a US president got into a conflict like this, an oil war or an energy war, his party lost the next set of elections, which, by the way, are only about 200 days away. So with 15% of the US Navy tied up in a 21-mile strait that it literally cannot reopen because it's being outflanked by a smaller country, a somewhat insignificant country when it comes to military size and economic size, the question isn't whether or not the US can win this war. Iran's already proving that they've actually got more leverage than the US ever thought. The real question is Washington even playing the right game? But before we get into it, my name's Nolan Matthias, and if you want the truth, the real truth, about economics, finances, and the real games that are being played, this is the place for you. So do me a favor, hit the subscribe button and hit the like button so more people like you can see this video. So here's the numbers. As of this filming, the Strait of Hormuz has been closed for 56 days. Brent crude is now at $101.91. And even though the Strait of Hormuz is shut down, Iran's oil exports are higher than they were in 2025. 1.71 million barrels per day. And this is while 15% of the US Navy is trying to keep the strait open for non-Iranian traffic and trying to completely shut it down for traffic that is going into Iran. And ironically, Iran has the upper hand here. They've been laying mines, making it impossible for ships to pass. And those that do try to pass are finding themselves in narrow straits, even narrower than that 21 miles, that are completely controlled by the Iranian military. They're using fast boats and drones that overwhelm ships. And the strategy is very hard for the US to defend, because with so many boats and so many drones, it simply overwhelms the capacity of the US Navy to defend ships and, in some cases, even themselves. In fact, at this point, the US and foreign militaries, foreign navies, aren't even going through the strait because they know that it's going to be a pretty hard-fought fight. But the crazy part is that the US was warned back in 1988 that they needed to prepare for this exact type of situation. That's when the USS Samuel Roberts was taken out by a $1,500 Iranian contact mine. Back then, the Pentagon was warned. It needed to bulk up mine countermeasures. But despite the warnings, they didn't. They didn't even bother creating any new ships. And globally, the US has 20 counter-mine ships in total. That's it. Iran, it has 2,000 to 6,000 mines, and they're laying them in that 21-mile strait, making it virtually impossible for any ships that Iran doesn't want to go through to be able to go through. Now, at the same time that pretty much no ships are going through that strait, some experts estimate that Iran has a fleet of shadow tankers that is in excess of 600. These ships are supposedly being used to transport oil to China, and all of the currency that's being used is the Chinese currency, completely outside of the US's purview. They're supposedly being loaded at the JAS terminal, which is kind of on the other side of the Strait of Hormuz, and in some cases they're using ship-to-ship transfer in order to get the oil out into international waters. If those ships are stopped, they have paperwork from other countries. So while the US has started this conflict that's putting world oil prices in jeopardy, Iran is actually exporting more, supposedly at least, than they were before. But that has nothing to do with why the US can't beat Iran in this energy war. It just goes to show that the US completely underestimated Iran's leverage. And Iran isn't even using a new playbook here to outflank the US. They're literally using one of the oldest playbooks in the art of war. It's hold the ground that is the highest cost for the opponent to take. And right now, that's this 21-mile strip of water that the US can't regain control of. A strip of water that moves a pretty significant amount of the world's oil. But if you want to know the truth here, the real truth, and you've probably heard this in the media, it's the US thinks it's playing chess. 2D chess, 3D chess, 5D chess, depending on which Fox episode you're watching, and it thinks Iran is playing checkers. But the reality is, Iran isn't playing chess or checkers. They're playing poker, and they're winning. Think of it this way. Chess is a game where it's taking turns, back and forth. The player that has the better information, who's smarter, ends up being the player that wins. This is what many Americans in the US thinks it's playing. Checkers is a way simpler game. It doesn't take as much strategy. That's how the US is looking at Iran. as a nation that isn't smart enough and doesn't have the leverage to beat the US at the game that the US thinks they're playing. Poker, which is the game that it seems like Iran is playing, is a game where everyone has incomplete information. You can't see the other person's cards. You can see the amount of money in the pot, and you can take a gamble on whether or not it makes sense for you to play the cards that you're dealt. And the bigger the stack you have, the more pain tolerance you have, the more gambles that you can take. And the game will often end when somebody folds. That's the game that the US and Iran are playing right now. A game where they expect the other player to fold. But the US is measuring pot size by size of military, and Iran is measuring pot size by the amount of global economic damage that they can inflict. And when it comes to economic damage, Iran is definitely holding all the chips. Because here's what flows through the Strait of Hormuz. Depending on the estimate, it's anywhere from 25 to 34% of global trade in oil that is seabound. It's 20% of global oil consumption, 20% of the global liquid natural gas trade, 30% of global urea, which is fertilizer, and the one thing that nobody was even thinking about, which is 30% of helium. And this is chip-grade helium. The thing that AI companies, for example, need in order to make the chips that is powering the thing in the US economy that is literally propping up the stock market and keeping it from looking like the next recession. In addition to holding all the chips, though, there's another factor at play here, and that's the political damage that Iran can do to the US. Because in Iran, the political system is set up as a theocracy. There's no votes. It's one group that stays in power for the long term. They don't have to worry about being elected. They don't have to worry about taking on a conflict that's going to knock them out of power. In fact, the US just proved how much power the theocracy in Iran actually has by taking out the leader only to have another leader just like him show up, his son actually, to take over and continue the fight. But in the US, that's not the way it works. It's a democracy, which means power changes every 2 to 4 years. And we're 200 days away from an election that's potentially going to change the balance of power. And every single other time that the US has gotten into an energy conflict, the balance of power has in fact changed in the very next election. And that's because voters punish pain. And higher gas prices, inflation, and less jobs, that is the ultimate pain for Americans. And if you think for a second that Iran doesn't know that the longer this conflict goes on, the more pain that they're creating for the US, and specifically Donald Trump and the Republicans, then you're out of your mind. They know that pushing this out as long as they can is going to create a lot of unrest in the US. It's going to create a lot of economic damage globally, and it's potentially going to change things very, very quickly. So it's important to understand that all of the countries involved, both directly and adjacently, they'll have different pain tolerances. The US, it has a low tolerance to high oil prices and inflation and all of the bad things that have happened in the last 5 years that have made it less affordable for Americans to do the things that they want to do. Iran, on the other hand, they don't have to worry about power. They don't have to worry about a lot of things because they've been living under sanctions for the last 30 to 40 years. So if this becomes their opportunity to inflict maximum damage, why wouldn't they take it if they got brought into the conflict? And what's surprising here is that even though a significant amount of China's oil comes through the Strait of Hormuz, they've been rather quiet on this whole front. And that's because they have a pretty high pain tolerance for this conflict. In fact, China's probably looking at it from the perspective of if this causes political unrest in the US, that's actually a benefit to us. And not only that, they have 1.4 billion barrels of oil in their own reserves, meaning China can wait for this to play out for the next 3 to 4 months without having to worry too much. But every bit of damage that it does to the US works in China's favor as well. So the game that's being played here is very much a prisoner's dilemma. This is an economics game, a game theory game, that shows the difference between win-win strategies, lose-lose strategies, and win-lose strategies. And this perfectly portrays exactly what's going on between Iran and the US right now. You see, in a win-win game, where both parties are playing to win, you can count a win as a +1. So if both parties win, they're both +1, and the sum of the outcome is 2. That is the best possible outcome in a prisoner's dilemma. But the US is playing not to win, but to make sure that Iran loses. And in a win-lose conflict, the winner gets +1 points, the loser gets -1, and the total sum is 0. This is what's called a zero-sum game. The total economic outcome is 0. And that's the game that the US is playing. They're playing for Iran to lose. Either they submit completely or we keep fighting. And here's the problem. Iran has enough leverage to make it so that the US can't win outright. And it's pretty clear that there's no way for Iran to win this either. So that leads us to the probable outcome of this whole situation, which is a lose-lose game. At least short of dropping a nuke on Iran or something crazy like that, which I hope never happens. In a lose-lose game, both parties lose one. The total sum is -2. So you can see pretty quickly and pretty clearly that if everyone's playing to win, the whole world ends up better off. And if you end up playing a lose-lose game, everybody's worse off. And in this conflict, it's not just that Iran or the US is going to be worse off, but everybody is going to be worse off. So Iran can play for the US not to win, the US can play for Iran to lose, and then you can end up in a lose-lose situation that sees this conflict go on for an extended period of time, causing significant pain to everybody involved and even those that aren't. So the US thought it was getting into a conflict where it could absolutely dominate and win, and it turns out Iran had this ability that the US didn't even think about, or at least the person who made the call to start the war didn't think about, and that's what's making it impossible for the US to win this war. So in the prisoner's dilemma, the US is playing to win, Iran is playing not to lose, and when one side, Iran, has infinite pain tolerance, not losing is actually winning. They were going to lose anyways, so if you're going to lose, why not take the other party down with you? And that's exactly what's happening. But why is it happening? Why is this even possible? It's because Iran can attack cheaper than the US can defend. Iran's weapon of choice, a $1,500 mine. For the US to do a mine clearing operation, it's $1.5 million plus. The Shahed drone, it costs $20,000 to $50,000 to build, and they build 500 a month. A Patriot interceptor is $4 million, and they built 600 of them total last year. An anti-ship missile, it's about $100,000. But if one of those hits a US ship, it can be $100 million plus just to fix it. And then don't even get me started on the small speedboats that they have an infinite supply of, that swarm bigger ships and are almost impossible to defend against. Not only that, the one tool that the US relies on in many cases is sanctions. And the sanctions tool, it's completely broken as well. I mean, just look at this chart. You can see that Iran is exporting more oil than it's exported for the last couple of years. Not only that, but in order to deal with the higher oil prices, the US has actually had to unwind sanctions on Russia to get more oil flowing. So sanctions, which is the tool that other countries are aligning with currency-wise, the BRICS nations, in order to prevent, are now in and of themselves getting broken. But let's take it one step further, because Iran isn't winning an oil war. It actually proved that oil wasn't the choke point. The day they started targeting other things like helium was the day that they proved that they had a lot more leverage than just energy. So while the world watched the US attack Iran, Iran had its own sort of nuclear strike, and that was targeting helium supply, which directly targets the most significant industry in the US right now, artificial intelligence and tech. And it could take up to 5 years for the damaged infrastructure to be rebuilt. This is the problem with going to war with a small nation that you underestimate, especially when you think they're playing checkers, but find out later that they're not only better at chess than you, but they're playing a completely different game. They found a way to take the war to the United States without ever having to leave their own nation. Then on top of that, there were a whole bunch of other dominoes. Europe is literally running out of jet fuel. 170 million travelers have already been affected. As the growing season is starting to pick up in the northern hemisphere, up to 30% of the supply of fertilizer is gone like that. Now the question is, what do you do about it? What does it cost? What's it going to break in your life? And what do you need to watch to know where this conflict is really going with respect to what actually matters, which is your pocketbook? Well, let's start with this. It's going to cost the average household about $3,000 to $5,000 more per year. The average gas expenditure is probably going to go up about $1,500. Airfare is going to increase by about $250 per trip. With the fertilizer shortage, there's about a 3 to 6 month lag, but we could see up to $1,200 in increased costs for groceries. And depending on how long this conflict goes, it could cost many Americans $400 to $600 more per year for heating if the liquid natural gas continues to be in shortage going into the winter months. So here are the things that break: long commutes, airline travel, variable rate debt. With higher inflation, higher interest rates, you can bet that that's going to get more expensive, and any businesses that rely on cheap fuel. The things that are a little bit more flexible are grocery budgets, utility bills, eating out, entertainment spending. Those can all be scaled back in at least some way, shape, or form. The things that aren't going to be affected are fixed rate debt, essential trade jobs. People are still going to need plumbers and electricians, cash savings that aren't exposed to a potential market crash, and home-based skills. the things that you can do at home on your own without having to hire somebody else to do it. Now, if you sort your life into these 3 buckets, you can tell pretty quickly how exposed you are financially to this conflict. And the more you can limit your exposure, the better. That could be things like limiting your travel, maybe growing your own vegetables in the garden, and cutting down how often you're going out for dinner, maybe being a little bit more conscious about leaving the lights on in the house, and then figuring out how you can insulate yourself from any sort of economic pain that may come from this. But here I think is the most important point. What's the scorecard? We need to stop watching the news. And if you really want to know what's happening in this conflict and what it's looking like for the near future, watch 3 things. The insurance premiums for ships that are operating in the Middle East. The higher these go, the riskier the conflict is getting. Then watch Iran's oil flow to China. The more oil is moving, the more that sanctions and blockades are failing. If this starts collapsing, then the US is winning. And you can literally find all of this data online. And then the last one is the US's petroleum reserves. If these start draining and keep draining, it means the US is running out of options. But unfortunately, you can't pay attention to the news anymore, because no matter what Trump says, Iran's coming back and saying something different. And who knows what's actually the truth? It really doesn't matter what's being said in the media or what's being said on Truth Social. What matters is who's running the Strait of Hormuz. And whoever's in control of it is the one who's winning. Even if winning for Iran simply means not letting the US win. But let's actually dig a little bit deeper into this, because everything that's being said in the media, it breaks if there's just a little bit of critical thinking that's actually happening. For example, right now, Washington's saying that oil is 50% of the Iranian regime's income. And if they cut it, it'll collapse. Well, let's be real about this. The US has been sanctioning Iran's oil since 2018. And it hasn't made a difference to their power. So now you somewhat know how to protect yourself, or at least how to limit your exposure. Here's what else you know. Chess, checkers, poker, Washington is playing the wrong game. And Iran, it's got a bigger stack than anybody expected, and they're playing simply not to lose. So while pundits are on Fox News saying Trump's playing chess, 3D chess, 4D chess, 5D chess, it doesn't really matter because Iran's playing poker, and they're calling the US's bluff. And the way that they're able to do that is because of the asymmetries. The pain that they're inducing on the US, the costs that are associated with even fighting the battle, the broken sanctions, the oil shocks that kill presidencies and cause political conflict. And they've got something in their back pocket, which is somebody feeding them more chips, which is China, that's the buyer of last resort for Iranian oil. Oh, and by the way, China's getting a pretty significant discount on the oil that they're buying. And the sleeper thesis here, and probably the most important one, is Iran didn't hit an oil choke point. It hit a checkpoint that affects everything from oil to energy to liquid natural gas to helium, and just the helium conversation alone has a significant impact on the US, primarily because of its role in making semiconductors, and that affects the US AI industry. So the playbook going forward is make sure your debt is fixed rate debt. Own hard assets, things that won't go down when the stock market inevitably corrects. And if you do hold stocks and bonds and things like that, make sure you're well diversified. And take it upon yourself right now to reduce the amount of places that you're driving to, the amount of travel that you're doing, the amount of variable rate debt that you have, and your exposure to the higher costs of things like groceries. Most importantly, though, pay attention to the indicators, not the news. It's insane that we live in a time where you can no longer trust the news. One side says one thing, the other side says another. In the same way it's on us to take responsibility for our financial education, it's becoming more and more important for us to take responsibility for figuring out what the real truth is, not by listening to the pundits, but by looking at the actual data. Because when the most powerful military on Earth can't control a 21-mile strip of water, you know that, win or lose, the US didn't win this conflict. It will never be able to claim that it won the war, because just the fact that Iran was able to last 56 days is a clear indication that the US lost. And not only did the US lose, but the entire global economy lost. One small country, massive pain. And this could be the point in history where the Allies don't support the invasion, the US starts to lose its control, and it becomes the beginning of the end for the world's biggest superpower. Oh, and if you want to see a video on what always happens before a superpower collapses, make sure you check out this one right here.